What would you do if a 9-year-old boy in duct-taped boots told you he could heal your child? That's exactly what happened one bitter Saturday morning in downtown Birmingham, Alabama. The kind of cold that doesn't bring snow, just cracked skin, foggy breath, and the kind of silence that settles outside hospitals where hope costs more than most can afford. People came and went through the sliding doors of the Summit Children's Medical Center, their scarves wrapped tight, their eyes avoiding each other, like shame or sorrow might be contagious. But among them was someone who didn't move. He sat quietly on a folded piece of cardboard, legs crossed, scribbling in a battered notebook like the wind didn't bother him. His name was Micah Blake. Different. Not just because of his clothes, a coat 2 sizes too big, sleeves rolled at the wrist, a red knit hat pulled low. Not just because one of his boots was held together with silver duct tape. No. What made Micah different was the way he watched people. He wasn't begging, he wasn't lost, he was observing, waiting like someone who knew something nobody else did. Most Saturdays you could find him there. The nurses had tried shooing him away when he first started showing up, but after a few weeks, they gave up. He didn't make trouble, just nodded politely when spoken to, sketched in silence, always watching. And somehow it became easier to ignore him than to question why a 9-year-old boy sat alone outside a pediatric hospital. Across the street, a black Escalade was parked in a no-stopping zone, engine idling. In the driver's seat sat Graham Vaughn, a high-powered commercial real estate executive. Tailored coat, $80, 0 cents, haircut, salt and pepper beard trimmed sharp. He was the kind of man who could clear a boardroom with a single look. But this morning, he looked like a man on empty. In the back seat, his 6-year-old daughter, Ellie, her curls were tucked behind one ear, a pink blanket draped over her lap. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. Ever since the car accident 2 months ago, Ellie hadn't moved her legs. A spinal cord injury, the doctors had said. Permanent damage, unlikely recovery. Words that drained every drop of color from a father's world. Graham opened the door, lifted her gently in his arms like porcelain, and started toward the hospital. He didn't notice the boy sitting on the box, but Micah noticed him. Micah saw how the man's hands shook, just slightly, under the weight of his daughter. How Ellie's eyes refused to look at the hospital, fixed instead on the sky above like she wanted to float away from it all. And as they passed, Micah did something nobody expected. He stood up, and softly, clearly, he said, "Sir, I can make your daughter walk again." Graham stopped mid-step, not because he was startled or even angry, but because the voice was too calm, too certain, like this was fact, not fantasy. He turned slowly. "What did you just say?" Micah didn't back down. "I said I can help her walk again." Graham looked the boy up and down, the taped-up boot, the cracked glasses hanging from his collar, the notebook hugged tight to his chest. It was absurd, offensive even. He shook his head. "That's not funny, kid." "I wasn't joking." Still no tremble in his voice, just calm. Grown-up calm from a boy who didn't even look old enough to spell paralysis. Graham exhaled sharply, adjusted his grip on Ellie and walked past without another word. But the words had stuck. They haunted him through the appointment, through every well-meaning lecture from neurologists and therapists, through every "miracles take time" and "she might never fully recover." The only thing that looped in his mind was a 9-year-old voice saying, "I can help her walk again." By the time they walked out that afternoon, the sun had broken through the clouds, but the air was still sharp. Graham held Ellie close as they crossed the parking lot, and that's when he saw him again. Same box, same coat, same notebook, but this time Micah was looking straight at him, like he knew Graham would be back. Graham froze for a moment, then walked straight up to him. "You again?" he muttered. "You think this is funny? You don't know her. You don't know what we've been through." Micah nodded. "I don't have to know her to try." Graham scoffed. "You're just a kid. What do you know?" Micah looked down at his feet. "My mom used to help people like her. She was a physical therapist. Taught me everything she knew." Graham's face twisted. unsure if he was angry at the absurdity or how much he wanted it to be true. "I don't want your money," Micah added. "Just 1 hour, let me show you." Graham stared at him for a long beat. Ellie had opened her eyes, quietly watching them both. Finally, Graham said, "Fine, Harrington Park, tomorrow, noon. Don't be late." Micah nodded once. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just said, "I'll be there." Sunday came with gray skies and wind that whispered of rain. Most folks stayed inside, but at Harrington Park, under a bare oak tree, Micah Blake sat on a bench like he had done it 1,000 times before. He wasn't fidgeting, wasn't nervous, just there, calm, focused. Beside him sat a small, worn gym bag. A folded towel was laid out neatly on the bench. In front of him, a patch of grass, not much bigger than a picnic blanket, littered with dry leaves. It didn't look like a place for miracles. At exactly 12:07 p.m., a black Escalade pulled up along the curb. Graham Vaughn stepped out first, buttoned up tight in a long wool coat. He looked like a man who regretted every step bringing him here. In the back seat, Ellie peeked out, her face expressionless, hands fidgeting with the edge of her pink blanket. Graham lifted her gently into her wheelchair and wheeled her over in silence. Micah stood to greet them. "Again," he said politely. Ellie gave a tiny wave. "Hi." Graham raised an eyebrow. "How do you know her name?" "You said it yesterday," Micah replied. "I remember stuff." Graham didn't respond. He just gestured to the towel. "So what now? You got a magic carpet in that bag?" Micah didn't take the bait. "No sir, just the basics." He reached into the gym bag and pulled out a pair of fuzzy socks, a tennis ball, a jar of cocoa butter, and a plastic container wrapped in cloth. Graham squinted. "What is all that?" "My mom's tools," Micah answered softly. "The rice is for heat, it helps loosen tight muscles. The ball's for pressure points." Graham folded his arms, deeply skeptical. "So you watched your mom stretch some legs and now you think you're a therapist?" Micah paused. "I watched her help a man walk again after 5 years in a chair. No machines, just her hands, her voice, and time." Then he turned to Ellie. "Is it okay if I work with your legs a little? Nothing will hurt, I promise, and if anything feels weird, just say stop." Ellie looked up at her dad. Graham hesitated, then sighed. "You can try, but I swear, if she so much as flinches—" "I understand," Micah said quietly. He knelt beside her wheelchair and gently pulled back the blanket. Her legs were thin, stiff, unmoving. Carefully, Micah placed the warm rice pack over her thighs. Ellie flinched slightly. "Too hot?" he asked. She shook her head. "It feels good." He waited. After a few minutes, he began to rotate her legs slowly, side to side, up and down. Not yanking, not forcing, just steady, gentle motions. Graham watched with guarded intensity, every muscle in his body coiled like a spring. "You ever do this before?" he asked. Micah didn't look up. "My mom used to bring me to the shelters after school. She worked with veterans, people who couldn't afford therapy. Said everybody deserves to feel human again." Graham's expression shifted, just slightly. "She taught me this stuff," Micah continued. "Said the body don't always need fancy machines. Sometimes it just needs attention. And patience." He tapped gently on Ellie's right knee. "You feel that?" Ellie hesitated. "No." Micah nodded. "That's okay. I'll keep asking." As he worked, he kept talking to her, not clinical questions, but curious ones. About her favorite cartoons, what kind of ice cream she liked, whether she liked dogs or cats better. Ellie answered in quiet sentences. Then she started asking him questions. "Do you go to school?" "I used to. Why not anymore?" Micah paused. "My mom got sick, she passed away. I've been figuring things out since." Ellie went quiet for a second. Then, "I'm sorry." Micah gave her a small smile. "Thanks." Graham, standing with his arms crossed, exhaled slowly. He didn't speak, but something in his posture softened. After about 30 minutes, Micah tapped her ankle again. "You feel that?" Ellie blinked. "A little, like pressure." Micah's eyes lit up for just a second, then he looked up at Graham. "That's good," Graham squinted. "She sometimes says that. During hospital therapy." "Yeah." Micah said. But in those rooms? There's machines, beeping, bright lights. Kids tighten up. They get scared. Out here, he gestured to the trees around them. There's space. There's air. The brain relaxes. It remembers. Graham didn't respond, but now he was listening. Micah finished the session by showing Ellie how to flex her toes. Simple, gentle movements. Nothing dramatic happened, but her face had changed. She wanted to try. Micah packed up his things. Same time next week? Graham cleared his throat. We're not promising anything. I'm not either, Micah replied. I'm just trying. Graham stared at him a long beat. Then, without thinking, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded $20 0-cent bill. Here, for your time. Micah stepped back. No, thank you. Graham blinked. Why not? Micah shrugged. Because your daughter smiled. That answer hit harder than any diagnosis ever had. Later that night, back at the Vaughn residence, Graham stood at the window of his study, swirling a glass of untouched scotch. His phone buzzed with emails and voicemails, contracts waiting for signatures. But all he could see was Ellie, smiling, talking, responding. From the kitchen, Ellie's voice drifted through. Daddy? He turned. Yeah, sweetheart. Do you think he really believes I can walk? Graham hesitated. Do you? She smiled. A small one, but real. He did. And somehow, that made all the difference. The next 2 Sundays, Graham Vaughn brought his daughter Ellie back to Harrington Park. No cameras, no big expectations, just the same towel on the grass, the same rice pack warmed in a thermos, and a boy with cracked glasses and steady hands, working without fanfare. And Ellie? She was trying now. Focused. Micah had a gift, not just in his hands, but in his presence. He never pushed her, never promised too much. He just kept showing up, talking to her like she mattered, like her body could remember how to move again if someone just had the patience to listen. And slowly, something shifted. She started feeling light pressure in her toes. She was learning how to flex them on command. She laughed more, asked more questions, and Graham? He found himself sitting cross-legged beside her, helping stretch her calves, pressing on the right spots the way Micah had shown him. There was no fanfare, just progress, real, slow, miraculous progress. But then came the 4th Sunday. The Escalade pulled up later than usual. When the doors opened, Micah knew something was off instantly. Ellie wasn't smiling. Her curls were tangled, her eyes red, and Graham's jaw was tight with frustration. She doesn't want to do it today, he said sharply, lifting her out of the car without waiting for a reply. Ellie didn't speak. She folded her arms tight as Graham lowered her into the wheelchair. Micah approached slowly. Ellie? What happened? She turned her head away. Graham sighed. She tried to move her legs this morning. Nothing happened. She's been upset since breakfast. Micah knelt beside her quietly. Hey, you want to talk to me? Ellie's voice came out in a whisper, hot with anger. It's pointless. Micah blinked. What is? This, she snapped. Trying. I do all the things you say and nothing happens. Nothing changes. I'm tired of trying. Graham's shoulders slumped. Like her words had taken the fight out of him too. He looked away. Micah didn't. He stayed right there, calm, grounded. You think I never feel like that? He said softly. Ellie didn't answer. You think I didn't sit in a shelter, watching my mom cough so hard she couldn't sleep, knowing we couldn't afford her medicine? You think I didn't cry when I had to leave school because I had no one to sign the papers? Ellie glanced at him, her eyes narrowing slightly. You're allowed to be mad, Micah said. I get mad too. Sometimes I want to give up, but if you stop now, the part of you that wants to walk might stop trying too. The wind rustled the trees. The park was quiet. Then Ellie whispered something no one expected. I'm scared. Graham turned sharply. It was the first time she'd admitted it, out loud. Micah leaned in closer. I am too, he said. Her eyes widened. You... He nodded. But being scared doesn't mean stop, it just means you're close to something big. A tear rolled down Ellie's cheek. She didn't wipe it, just whispered, "Okay," Micah nodded. "Let's try again. No pressure, just us." Graham crouched beside them now, his tone softer. "We'll go slow." This time, no one rushed. Micah laid out the towel, gently lifted Ellie's legs, and began the stretches. Graham held her hand while she focused. No talking, just breathing, just presence. Then, it happened. It wasn't huge, it wasn't perfect, but it was real. Micah tapped her right foot. "Try to move it again." She squinted, brow furrowed, mouth tight with effort. And then, it slid forward. Not much, maybe an inch. But it moved. Graham froze. "Wait, did you just do that again?" Ellie's face lit up like a switch had flipped. "I did that." She did it again. A slow, shaky slide forward, and this time she giggled. Micah didn't say anything. He just sat back, quiet, eyes shining. Graham dropped to his knees beside his daughter, his voice cracking. "You really did it." Ellie turned to Micah. "You said I would." He smiled. "I said we'd try." Later that night, the Vaughn house felt different. There was music playing. The air smelled like spaghetti sauce. Ellie retold the footslide moment over speakerphone to her aunt in California while Graham stood by the window, arms folded, watching the moon rise. He had stopped asking who Micah really was, because it didn't matter anymore. This kid, this stranger with nothing, had changed something in their home. Not just Ellie's legs, but the silence, the loneliness, the helplessness. It was all cracking. That night, after Ellie went to bed, Graham sat in his office staring at his laptop. His calendar was packed, client calls, contracts, travel. None of it felt urgent anymore. Instead, he opened a browser and typed, "Micah Blake, Birmingham." Nothing useful came up, just an old-school database entry from a closed elementary school. And one blurry community center newsletter with a line that read, "Thank you to Monique Blake and her son Micah for helping veterans stretch and move again." That was it. No address, no recent files. The boy was a ghost. Except he wasn't. He was real. He had made Graham's daughter smile again, made her move again. And Graham had a feeling this was only the beginning. By the fifth Sunday, something was different. It wasn't just Ellie's smile, wider and more certain, or Graham's posture, now less guarded, less weighed down by doubt. It was the bench under the oak tree, now flanked by fold-out chairs. It was the towel, now accompanied by an extra mat, a sandwich wrapped in foil, quiet gifts from one family to a boy who gave without asking. Micah Blake didn't say much when they arrived that morning. He just waved. "Ready, superstar?" he asked Ellie. She grinned. "Let's do it." As they began their routine, heat packs, light stretches, toe taps, Graham joined in. Sat cross-legged, mimicking every movement Micah demonstrated. Once, he stretched the wrong way. "You're bending the wrong knee," Micah grinned. Graham rolled his eyes. "I haven't stretched since college," they laughed. Even Ellie. Especially Ellie. Then, halfway through the session, Micah paused. "All right, Ellie," he said gently. "Let's try something new." From his bag, he pulled out a fabric belt and looped it under her knees, then handed each end to Graham. "She's going to try to lift both knees now," he explained. "We'll help balance, but the movement has to come from her." Graham blinked. "You sure?" Micah nodded. "She's ready." Graham knelt behind her. Ellie's brow furrowed in deep focus. She closed her eyes. Her hands gripped the wheelchair arms. She grunted softly, and then her knees lifted. Just an inch. Just enough. Graham gasped. "You did that?" Ellie beamed. "I did it," Micah whispered. "See, the body remembers. You just have to be patient enough to let it speak." Graham stared at the boy. "You're something else, kid." Micah didn't answer. He was already guiding Ellie into the next stretch, back to work like it was any other day. But something had changed. And not just in Ellie. The following Sunday, they weren't alone. Two families were waiting by the oak tree, one with a boy using a walker, the other with a girl recovering from a stroke. Both had heard whispers about the boy who helped the Vaughn girl move her legs again. Micah looked at Graham. "You don't have to do this," Graham said quietly. Micah adjusted the strap on his gym bag. "I want to." He gave up his usual session with Ellie that day to work with the new kids, showing their parents how to use warm rice packs, how to stretch gently, how to speak to their children with encouragement, not pressure. He knelt down and told one little boy, "You're not broken. You're just learning a different way to be strong." Ellie watched everything from her wheelchair. She didn't complain once. In the car on the way home, she said, "I like watching him help people." Graham glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Yeah," he said, "makes me feel like we're part of something good." By week 7, 5 more families showed up. By week 8, 11, a local pastor brought chairs. A nearby diner started dropping off bagels and hot coffee. Someone printed flyers that read "Free movement sessions, Sundays, noon, Harrington Park." They didn't include Micah's name. He asked them not to. But everyone knew who he was. When a reporter showed up from the Birmingham Sunday Post, she asked if she could write about him. Micah looked around at the parents massaging tiny legs, the kids laughing, the quiet buzz of hope that now filled the park. "As long as it's not about me," he said, "it's about them." The article ran the next weekend under the headline, "9-year-old with a gift helps dozens heal in a city park." Offers started pouring in, mentorship, equipment, free tutoring. But Micah, he still laid the same towel in the same spot, still used his duct tape boots, still checked in with Ellie first before helping anyone else. And then came week 9. The air was warmer, the trees moved slower. Even Ellie was quiet in the back seat, eyes focused, like she was ready. When they arrived, the park was already filled with families, not loud, not chaotic, just peaceful. Expectant, Micah unpacked his bag, laid out the towel, then gave Ellie a look. "You ready?" She nodded. No grin this time, just a look of steel determination. Graham wheeled her to the center of the mat. Micah knelt in front of her. "Same as always," he said softly. "We help you stand, you do the rest." Graham positioned himself behind her, hands ready. Micah took her legs, guided them into place. "Okay," he whispered, "on 3. Ellie closed her eyes. 1, 2, 3. Graham lifted. Micah steadied her knees. And then Ellie stood. Her legs shook, her arms trembled. But she was up, on her own 2 feet. The park fell silent. Some kids gasped. One mother covered her mouth. Micah didn't blink. He just whispered, "Yeah, you are." Graham stood there, frozen, tears welling. He slowly let go, and Ellie stayed standing. He stepped back, shaking. She's doing it," Micah stepped back too. "She's been doing it," and then Ellie took a step, then another, and then, like only a child can, like someone who's too young to be afraid, she took a 3rd step and fell into her father's arms. He caught her, sobbing and laughing all at once. "You did it! You really did it!" Ellie turned to Micah. "You said I could." Micah smiled gently. "I said we'd try." That night, back in the Vaughn kitchen, Micah poured cereal into a bowl. Graham leaned on the counter, voice low. "You know you changed everything, right?" Micah didn't look up. "I did?" Graham placed a hand on his shoulder. "My daughter walked today. Not because of a doctor or a pill or a machine, because a kid with duct tape on his shoes showed up. Again and again. Even when no one asked him to." Micah nodded. "That's what my mom would have done." Graham's throat tightened. "I wish she could have seen this." Micah looked up. "She did. I think she sees everything." Graham wiped his eyes. "Micah," he whispered, "you're going to change a lot of lives." Micah smiled softly. "I already am. Sometimes the people with the least give the most. Sometimes healing starts not with medicine but with belief. And sometimes all it takes to change the world is a boy with a warm towel, a quiet heart, and a reason to care." If this story moved you, Leave a comment below. Who is the Micah in your life? Or who have you helped to stand again, even if just in spirit?